So October 2024, I started building a Christmas card. I did one last year. This year I decided to do snowflakes. One of my early ideas was to do a big snowflake with like an infill using Posca paint pens. So I did some like demo sketches here of what I could do with the Posca paint pen and how close I could get it together. It wasn't really quite fine enough for my liking, but I quite like the idea of being able to do a snowflakey shape a bit like this. So I spent quite a long time trying to write a buffer algorithm and use Shapely and get their buffer algorithms to do a nice snowflake pattern where the lines go in and in and in, and I can make it more complicated. It was really difficult. I eventually gave up. This was kind of one of my early attempts. I could get it working quite nicely in some simpler areas, but the moment you wanted to do it everywhere, it became really problematic. You can see this kind of weird oddness here, and I could not figure out. Like, I spent quite a long time on this, I just couldn't make it work. So, if you can't win, then completely pivot. So I decided to go for a snowflake of snowflakes. So lay out snowflakes on a hexagonal grid, which they work quite nicely at, and the first version of that looks like this. I still was a little bit attached to using the Posca paint pens, and that ended up a little bit like this when it was rendered, and the detail is just not really there. The paint pens are just too thick for what my target was, which was an A6 card blank. So eventually I switched to a much finer pen. The Jelly Roll 05 is the finest white pen I had, and snowflakes are white, so that kind of worked. So this is the first version that I actually plotted. And as you can see, this has got a couple of different types of snowflakes on it. So it's got the kind of stellar, sector plated snowflakes, and it's also got the kind of more traditional ones with dendrites on. And these ones were still a little bit thick because I was using this as an outline. So the next thing I switched to just single lines, and making these a little bit simpler so that I could plot it with a fine pen. This was my first like actual final design, if you like, and then I started adding stuff in the background as well so that it was a little bit more of a holistic design. As you can see, these ones here, they're not very well distributed. They all line up in quite regular patterns, so I spent quite a little bit of time trying to randomize that. Final design looks a bit like this, and some of these you'll notice, like this one here, it's kind of twisted a little bit, so it looks a little bit 3D. Not sure that works particularly well, but that's how it landed, so that's what I've stuck with. In terms of code, it's a relatively simple sketch, I think. It's just using VSketch in Python. The main draw is kind of setting up a triangular grid. So that's basically getting all the points on a triangular grid within an area, and then for each of those grid points, checking whether it's inside a star, and if it is, we plot it, and we'll randomly choose in draw a star whether we have a dendrite type or a sector one, and then we'll draw one of the two and we'll add that into the mix. And then the background's a little bit more random, but you can go and have a look at this if you're interested on how I've made this sketch work. Put links in the video description. This is the final piece. As I said, it's like Jelly Roll 05 for the detail of the front, so it's quite fine pen work. And then all of the other ones, I used a glitter pen with clear ink. So if you look at it straight on, you can barely see that there's anything there at all. But if you twist it into the light, then you can see all of them. I've been pretty pleased with this. I've plotted about 60 or 70 to give to family and friends. And they take a long time. The plot time is around about 40 minutes, I think, for 4 cards. So I do 4 A6 cards on my A3 plotter. But I've just been kind of doing it during my work day. Every time one finishes, I go over and start another one. There's a little bit of a failure rate, quite a lot, because it's such a fine pen that it out of all of the Jelly Roll ones, they're normally pretty consistent. The 0.5 doesn't seem to be as consistent. I've tried a few different things. Having a little bit more pressure does seem to help. I have a failure rate of about 1 in 4. but that's kind of a reasonable yield, and I've given up trying to do anything about it. So that's been really fun. I've enjoyed doing it, and I'm looking forward to coming back and doing another one in 2025.